We have to help the American worker. We have to help the countries from which the American workers, they came out of these companies that were doing phenomenally well. You saw where payroll was going way up, where wages were going way, way up. There's never been a time like this. We can't lose those companies. And we want the worker to be happy. And we're being, I think, more generous than anybody's ever been. We want to take care of the worker, but we want to make sure that when we win the war, it's only a question of, it's when, not if. When we win the war against the virus, we want to make sure those companies are ready to charge forward, not that they've been disbanded because we were penny wise and dollar foolish.
So they're trying to keep businesses open as long as they can by sending them checks. That's the idea. The federal government's going to try to give them money. I will get into the response package and the Democrats' efforts to just leverage it at the 11th hour for maximum partisan political benefit. It's an abject disgrace. It's absolutely disgusting what's going on. But here, first, I want to walk you through this analysis from Professor John Ioannidis, who has put a piece out, "We are making decisions without reliable data." Now, this guy is professor of medicine and professor of epidemiology and population health at Stanford University School of Medicine. And he's not alone in this thinking, but he's as credentialed a person as you're going to find on this topic, basically. And here's what he said. This is my point. And by the way, I'm now getting attacked by the left for saying that we have to go back to work, even if it means that we would suffer a higher casualty rate than a multi-month lockdown. And they're, how many deaths are okay? These people are morons. They're a disgrace. And they don't understand that we make these decisions. Just as I was telling you last hour, we make policy decisions where we know there'll be casualties all the time. We are heading into a Great Depression unless we stop this. We cannot keep doing this. I know everyone's all scared and they're terrified, they're petrified. We are heading into a Great Depression unless we stop this. So and the president's basically said as much, but I'm getting the sense that there are some people who think that they're going to stop him from doing, or at the state level, they're going to keep this going, or they're going to manage to convince the president that we need to have this forever. Let me go back to, what is the real risk here? What does the real data say? And here's what you get. Professor John Ioannidis has the following to add to this. The data, quote, "The data collected so far on how many people are infected and how the epidemic is evolving are utterly unreliable. Given the limited testing to date, some deaths and probably the vast majority of infections due to SARS-CoV-2 are being missed. We don't know if we are failing to capture infections by a factor of 3 or 300. 3 months after the outbreak emerged, most countries, including the U.S., lack the ability to test a large number of people, and no countries have reliable data on the prevalence of the virus in a representative random sample of the general population." So we don't know. We don't know what the mortality rate is. We don't know how many infections there are out there. We're not even close to how many infections there are out there. And one of the major reasons that I've been saying this all along for the overreaction has been people assume that we have a fatality rate that's at least 10 times. Some were initially saying, I think, more like 50 times what you have for the flu. Well, that scares people, understandably. But we have a case study here where you have effectively almost a controlled, it's not a controlled experiment, but a contained environment for an experiment in real time. The Diamond Princess case study. The one situation where an entire closed population was tested was the Diamond Princess cruise ship and its quarantined passengers. This is all from this piece by the professor at Stanford. The case fatality rate there was 1%, but this was a largely elderly population in which the death rate from COVID-19 is much higher. Projecting the Diamond Princess mortality rate onto the age structure of the U.S. population, the death rate among people infected with COVID-19 would be 0.125%. But since this estimate is based on extremely thin data, there were just 7 deaths among the 700 infected passengers and crew. The real death rate could stretch from 5 times lower, 0.025%, to 5 times higher, 0.625%. It is also possible that some of the passengers who were infected might die later, and that tourists may have different frequencies of chronic diseases, a risk factor for worse outcomes with SARS-CoV-2 infection than the general population. Adding these extra sources of uncertainty, reasonable estimates for the case fatality ratio in the general U.S. population vary from 0.05% to 1%. That huge range markedly affects how severe the pandemic is and what should be done. A population, 0.05% rather to 1%. A population-wide case fatality rate of 0.05% is lower than seasonal influenza. If that is the true rate, locking down the world with potentially tremendous social and financial consequences may be totally irrational. It's like an elephant being attacked by a house cat. Frustrated and trying to avoid the cat, the elephant accidentally jumps off a cliff and dies. This is what I am trying to say. And by the way, I mean, I'm being attacked now on social media, on Twitter and elsewhere, just psychotically by the left for making exactly this point. I'm saying, look, we have to go back to work, even if it means that there would be a greater incidence of infection. And with that, there will be a greater loss of life than if we continue in complete lockdown mode for, 6 months. But we can't, the country can't sustain, and their lives will be ruined and people will die. That's what's going to happen from the depression that will come from this. And I feel like some, especially these like work from home journo types, and people that are in the information economy and they're used to teleworking and they feel like, they've got savings for 6 months or a year. They seem to think this isn't that big a deal. We are on the precipice of really scary stuff if this continues. And I'm not trying to fearmonger, but I feel like, okay, now we take the virus seriously. We need to take the possibility of a depression seriously, too. He continues, by the way, with this analysis, which I think is essential for everybody to know. Could the COVID-19 case fatality rate be that low? No, some say, pointing to the high rate in elderly people. However, even some so-called mild or common cold type coronaviruses that have been known for decades can have a case fatality rate as high as 8% when they infect elderly people in nursing homes. In fact, such mild coronaviruses infect tens of millions of people every year and account for 3 to 11% of those hospitalized in the U.S. with lower respiratory infections each winter. So what he's saying here is that even, among the elderly population, coronaviruses that are more similar to a common cold, not COVID-19, but other coronaviruses, it's known for a long time, if they get into the elderly population, they can kill as many as 8% of the elderly. So he says these mild remember, this is a professor of disease and epidemiology at Stanford Medical School. This is all he does. This is his entire, life's work has been on this issue. He's saying that among the elderly, you could have an 8% fatality rate for a standard coronavirus, not COVID-19. So he's saying that not only is that a higher rate than a lot of people are talking about now, he's saying COVID viruses kill people all the time. We have no idea what the true number is. I'm sorry, coronaviruses, not COVID viruses. Coronaviruses. Here's where he gives you some details on this. In an autopsy series that tested for respiratory viruses in specimens from 57 elderly persons who died during the 2016 to 2017 influenza season, influenza viruses were detected in 18% of the specimens, while any kind of respiratory virus was found in 47%. In some people who die from viral respiratory pathogens, more than one virus is found upon autopsy, and bacteria are often superimposed. A positive test for coronavirus does not mean necessarily that this virus is always primarily responsible for a patient's demise. So this then goes again to, we don't even know, just because somebody has coronavirus when they die, it doesn't even mean that that necessarily is the reason for that death based upon what we see from looking at the 2016-27 flu season, where there can be a number of factors and a number of different viruses at play at any point in time. What is the mortality rate? If we assume that case fatality rate among individuals infected by SARS-CoV-2 is 0.3% in the general population, a mid-range guess from the Diamond Princess analysis and that 1% of the U.S. population gets infected, about 3.3 million people, this would translate to about 10,000 deaths. This sounds like a huge number, but it is buried within the noise of the estimates of deaths from influenza-like illness. If we had not known about a new virus out there and had not checked individuals with PCR tests, the total number of new deaths due to influenza-like illness would not seem unusual this year. Are we sure that flattening the curve is that much better is another point that he raises. If the health system does become overwhelmed, the majority of the extra deaths may not be due to coronavirus, but to other common diseases and conditions such as heart attacks, strokes, trauma, and bleeding. If the level of the epidemic does overwhelm the health system, extreme measures have only modest effectiveness. Flattening the curve may make things worse. Instead of being overwhelmed during a short acute phase, the health system will remain overwhelmed for a more protracted period. That's another reason we need to think about the exact level of activity. And then he basically says that, and this is what I've been saying, this could lead to riots. This could even lead, again, I'm not trying to be alarmist, folks. We're going to be okay. I know that today I'm a little more dark on this topic than I've been in a while, but I'm seeing the economic data doesn't lie. I mean, there's a graph going around right now about unemployment and unemployment after the 2008 crisis, or during the 2008 financial crisis, versus unemployment now. And yeah, that's where we are. We're seeing, I think 600,000 was the number that I saw on this graph in 1 week. It's astonishing, the unemployment spike. I mean, it's a graph, and then all of a sudden there's this huge hockey stick-like projection that just goes straight up for unemployment. And we're, what, in week 2 of the extreme shutdown measures? He also says we could end up making this, meaning the government could end up making this worse than the 1918 influenza pandemic. With lockdowns of months, if not years, life largely stops. Short-term and long-term consequences are entirely unknown, and billions, not just millions of lives, may be eventually at stake. One can only hope that, much like in 1918, life will continue. Conversely, with lockdowns of months, if not years, life largely stops. The long-term consequences of this could end up killing more people. That's where we are. And that's the reality. So everyone needs to wake up to that right now. And that means that trying to limit the risk to as close to zero as possible of people getting this, that's going to become counterproductive. We're going to reach a point at which that's no longer possible. I'm not saying we're there already. I've said 15 days, fine. But this is where the situation stands right now. We have to get America back to work, not in months, in weeks. And really, within 2 weeks, I think, is what the goal should be. That doesn't mean that there's not social distancing. It doesn't mean that we don't do a lot of things. Wash the hands, protect the vulnerable elderly population. Those individuals, people that are more vulnerable, should be given additional special resources and protections. And we all understand, everyone is paying attention to what's going on in this country, that we need to protect our vulnerable populations. But that's where we are. We have to do something to get the economy going again, or else that is going to become a bigger threat to this country than this virus. That's where we are right now, according to experts who are looking at it. I don't know what else to say. I'm just trying to spread what I think is the most necessary information for our decision making right now.
Do you think it'll be wrapped up by Monday?
Well, I hope it is. We're having good bipartisan agreements. The initial bill Leader McConnell put in didn't have any Democratic input, and we were worried they would just try to put it on the floor and not consult Speaker Pelosi, because the House still has to pass this. But actually, to my delight and surprise, there has been a great deal of bipartisan cooperation thus far.
Yeah, even the president was speaking very positively about you, and
that doesn't happen very often.
Even Speaker Pelosi.
And what was the thanks that the president got for that, and other Republicans for working with Democrats like Schumer for days in a bipartisan way to try to get a bill passed that would help with the situation? The Democrats were involved from the very beginning. This should be great, right? We should be all set. What happened last night at the 11th hour? I mean, it almost was the 11th hour. I don't know what the time was, but What happened last night? Oh, Nancy Pelosi showed up and all of a sudden said, no bipartisan bill. I'm going to start a new bill. And the Democrats in the Senate went along with it. Wouldn't let the cloture vote happen. Wouldn't let the Senate vote on a $1 trillion plus relief package. Right? That's exactly what happened. They were involved. Schumer, the Democrats. But I mean, the left is completely insane. The bipartisan facade has been breaking down very quickly on this. I mean, leftists are totalitarians and they're vicious. So even in a pandemic, they don't stop being vicious totalitarians. A lot of us are trying to talk about solutions and what's best for everybody, trying to save as many people as possible while also preventing a depression that will destroy the country and end up killing who knows how many people. We like to think that we could have a bipartisan conversation about something of this seriousness, but leftists are insane. They're insane with their hatred of Trump, but also they have a vicious totalitarian impulse that they absolutely cannot put aside, right? They want to control everything, has to be their way. And you see this with Democrats with Pelosi. What do you think is the thing that they absolutely want to make sure they get funding for? I mean, I know that they've just decided, I think it was, they're trying to limit, I think, elective procedures like abortions right now. Oh, just give it time. I'm sure there'll be a federal judge because all medical elective procedures right now are being put on hold. Is an abortion an elective procedure? Ask a Democrat that. Oh, it's not elective. They'd say it's life-saving. It's life-ending. But Pelosi came in and is going to have a whole, I'm sure, laundry list of things that she wants that have nothing to do with saving anybody from this pandemic, have nothing to do with just helping the American people. It's Pelosi holding the American economy hostage right now. I mean, the market is now the Dow is below 19,000, plummeting again today. Okay, it was at 30,000 a few weeks ago. The market's getting absolutely crushed. And people are losing money and you know, there's real pain here. Pelosi doesn't care. Let's just say it, Pelosi's an unethical and nasty person. She is. Doesn't affect her at all. She's going to keep getting money. She's going to keep getting, the millions and millions of dollars. You know, as long as she has access to her bank accounts, probably, foreign and domestic, she's good. You know, whatever she needs, she's covered. This doesn't really matter to her. He lives in a mansion. You know, some of this is bouncing around Congress. Anyone can get this anywhere. We know that. You've got 5 Republican senators out of action right now. Senator Rand Paul actually is positive for COVID-19. He's asymptomatic. Merkel, the chancellor of Germany, she is in self-quarantine right now. So, yeah, I mean, politicians are subject to this as well. But Pelosi seems to lack a fundamental appreciation for the severity and the seriousness of the economic moment right now. And this is just another example of the Democrats, even now, can't stop playing politics. Even now.
So at a time when the country is crying out for bipartisanship and cooperation, and we saw that over the last 48 hours when regular members of the Senate, not in the leadership office, not in the Speaker's office, for goodness sake, she's the Speaker of the House, not the Speaker of the Senate. We don't have one. We were doing just fine until that intervention. So I want the American people to fully understand what's going on here. The markets are already reacting to this outrageous nonsense. We have an obligation to the American people to deal with this emergency and to deal with it tomorrow. And if we don't, I want everybody to fully understand, you've seen everybody who's on record. Now, I've conspicuously avoided trying to turn this into any kind of partisan effort for 2 days. But it's pretty clear what's going on here.
Yes, it is. Have you ever heard Mitch McConnell get that upset about really anything? I mean, this is just a betrayal. It's a betrayal not just of the bipartisan effort that was going on. Remember, Schumer, I played that clip for you. That was from last week. He's saying, we're working with Republicans. It's good. We're on this. We're going to take care of this. Then Nancy Pelosi shows up. She's like, nope, let's hold them hostage. And the Democrats in the Senate go, yeah, fine. That sounds good. Mitch McConnell's upset because it's also a betrayal of the American people. I mean, the country is going to be increasingly politically combustible here, meaning that we're not going to just, continue to say, oh, well, well, political leadership is on this and they're working on it and, they'll take care of us. Politicians haven't missed a paycheck. Politicians don't plan on missing a paycheck. Most members of the media, and look, for now, even members of the conservative media, we're in that fortunate, those of us who can work from home or write from home or do whatever it is that we can do remotely. So far, media organizations are keeping up with business. They're keeping going. But by and large, this isn't going to continue either. You need businesses. You need, do you watch, cable news shows and they've got sponsors, they've got car companies and Starbucks. And if everything's shut down, the sponsorships are going to go away too, folks. This is where we are. Everyone's going to be affected by this. And in ways that they can't even begin to really accurately gauge. And in that environment, Pelosi is doing this. It is a complete disgrace. The Senate bill was a bipartisan bill. It had Democrat input from the very beginning. And Pelosi just saunters in and is like, hey, this is not what we're going to do. We're going to do what I want. And you have to look at this and say, when do we get to call Pelosi out for just being a disgraceful and unethical person? The delay here matters. We keep hearing about how the timing matters for fighting against COVID-19. It matters for getting masks. It matters for N95 respirators. The delay matters. And it also matters for the economy. We don't have days and days to wait here. People are making decisions. They're shutting businesses down. Bad stuff is happening in real time. And she just... Also, what does this mean about the confidence we can have in any part of the legislative ability to fix this right now? At any point in time, Nancy Pelosi could just throw a fit and the Democrats will go along with her. Democrats in the Senate? She's not the Speaker of the Senate. It was Senate Democrats that took their marching orders from Nancy on this. And I saw a friend of mine from Capitol Hill tweeted this out, Josh Holmes. He said the Democrat filibuster of corona relief is the single most irresponsible act I've seen in 20 years of being around the Senate. God help the Americans whose livelihoods will be irreparably damaged tomorrow as a result. The anger is going to rise, my friends, and the anger is going to start rising toward people who don't understand how painful this is for a lot of folks out there who are losing everything, who are losing businesses, losing livelihoods, losing life savings, losing hope, losing a future. There's more than just a virus to fight against here. We all know that, or at least we should. And it's troubling today, having leftists come after me because I'm trying to make the case that we need to balance this out. It can't just be whatever we do to stop the virus is inherently justified, because at some point you cross, on the axis here of how many people are you losing and how much are you losing in American society. You cross the point at which you're unwilling to continue with the lockdown because you realize that the losses in every other regard are too much. It's just troubling to see. Look, leftists are contemptible people in general. I would like to do everything possible to save everybody I can across the country, and not that I can, that we can as a government and as a people across the country. And yet leftists continue to be contemptible, even of those of us who are really trying to approach this in good faith and push for wise decision making, wise policy. And as I've said to you, I'm right. I'm not just in the middle of, I'm not just in New York State or in New York City. I'm in the middle of New York City, the greatest concentration of COVID-19 anywhere in the United States. The United States now has the third most cases in the world. And I'm saying, look, we have to find a compromise here. We have to find a balance between the acceptable risk and the damage done to the economy. That's where we are right now. And the government's trying to figure this out, too, which I think is part of why you have not seen, at least yet, the president come forward. And as I go to air here, he has not yet done a press conference. I saw Cuomo's press conference this morning. But the Democrats playing a game at this point is something that nobody should ever forget. Nancy Pelosi is somebody who, she sees power, she sees advantage, she sees the ability to exercise leverage over the other side. Doesn't matter how desperate the situation. In fact, the more desperate the situation, the better. The more desperate the circumstance, the more she feels like she's able to get her way, because she'll play as dirty as she has to play. And this is why you're going to see all this stuff that the Democrats in the House caving to the insane left wing of the House Democrats, which these people are nuts. There's some people who are still, we shouldn't lose sight of the threat of climate change while this is going on. These people are lunatics. But the Democrat left still has a lot of influence over the party and still has a lot of say even over the leadership of the party, like Nancy Pelosi. And so she's willing to make this decision. She's willing to cave to them. And it's appalling. I mean, I'm quick to say that, I've all along tried to say that we should come together here, and I'm already seeing this fray before we even know how bad this is going to get and where we're going to be. I'm already seeing that. The hyper partisan nature of all the stuff that's going on right now in Congress, as well as in much of the media. I mean, today there was a CNN piece about how 3 people overdosed on chloroquine in Nigeria in the aftermath of President Trump's comments that maybe this will be an effective treatment for COVID-19. I don't know if these are people who just took it themselves or if they had a doctor who poorly administered it or something, but how is this even a news story? I've asked. And I've seen a lot of people, snarky liberals. I'm under left-wing assault today, just on social media. They're all coming after the buckster, which is fine. They're morons. And ultimately you start to recognize, what are these people? Idiots wake up and they're idiots all the time, and they'll never be right. They'll never be ethical. They'll never be worth anyone's time. And they just speak to the brainwashed and the largely brain dead of the progressive left. And that's what they do. That's their existence. The people that work in the media that cater to this left wing insanity. Some of them are the same people that I've seen who are big advocates for, Andrew Gillum should be the governor of Florida because he seems like a really solid, ethical individual. You seen the stories about Gillum's situation? I also had to note that there were some left-wing journos out there who were saying, he was at a wedding and it was with a friend. I saw that. I think the Young Turks guy put that out there. He was just at a wedding, No, he was actually at he was in a hotel with a male escort and methamphetamine on the premises, and I'm not even getting into this what the special medicine was for, but special medicine for other stuff, and that you inject, which I didn't even know that was a thing. And we were told that this guy should be governor of Florida, a very important, very large state. Because that's right. If we had a Democrat like Andrew Gillum in charge in Florida, the COVID-19 response now would be better. That's what they want you to believe. And this story in Nigeria, a country that of the journalists that are all piling on me now for saying, why does CNN think this is a news story? The answer to my question is it's a news story because it's a way of saying Trump overstated this. And so now people are dying. Trump lied. People died about chloroquine. That's supposed to be the takeaway. Or Trump overstated and people, this is idiotic. Trump said it may not be anything. It may not mean anything. We're hopeful. We'll see. And 3 people in a country that is over 5,000 miles away, a country of 180 million plus people to begin with, 3 people overdose on this, a drug that's been in that country for decades and people have been taking to fight malaria for decades. And this is CNN shares this from their main account with 40 million followers on Twitter. This is a news story. Why? Because of the Trump angle. And people will pretend that they can't see that, but of course that's why. So, here's where we are with all of this. It's going to get, as it gets scarier, there'll be more bad faith, partisan, leftist morons running around yelling at people and being crazy and saying that, this is the same media that was telling us for the last week the biggest problem was calling it Wuhan virus because that's so racist, or calling it a Chinese virus because that's so racist. Now they're turning around and saying anybody who wants to shut the or turn the economy back on from the shutoff as soon as possible, I didn't say tomorrow, wants more dead people. This is just bad faith idiocy. That's all it is. Bad faith idiocy. So, you get a lot of that from the left, and we're going to see a lot more of it going forward. Let's talk about some of the, I'm trying to find some of the upside here. First of all, things that have worked so far, and then also things that might work in the future. Let's switch gears into some of that. And then also I'll tell you about, we got to do sort of our quarantine hangout session where I tell you about what's going on with me, and we'll do a roll call, and because this is it. You guys, Team Buck is my only team right now. I don't get to see anybody. I'm on lockdown. I get to see the family French bulldog. That's really it. You know, with very, very seldom exception for young family members who are healthy. You know, I don't get to see the people in my life, so I get to talk to all of you. This is more important than ever from a news standpoint that I get to address all of you, but also personally and psychologically. I mean, you know, the team, you guys are all, and gals, of course. I have to do the general guys. You know, guys, it means everybody. You guys, I'm from New York. That's how we talk. You are keeping me company through this quarantine in a time when that is meaningful. And I hope I'm providing at some level the same for those of you who listen and who watch. And also, that's why I want more than ever as many people to write in and just tell me what you're going through, what it's like across the country, and what you're thinking.
If you look at the dynamics of the outbreak in Italy, we don't know why they are suffering so terribly, but there's a possibility, and many of us believe, that early on, they did not shut out as well the input of infections that originated in China and came to different parts of the world. One of the things that we did very early and very aggressively, the president, was put the travel restriction coming from China to the United States, and most recently from Europe to the United States, because Europe is really the new China. Again, I don't know why this is happening there to such an extent, but it is conceivable that once you get so many of these spreads out, they spread exponentially, and you can never keep up with this tsunami. And I think that's what, unfortunately, our colleagues and our dear friends in Italy are facing.
So again, we return to Dr. Fauci here saying that the shutdown of flights from China is the single most important early stage decision that the Trump administration made, right? The shutdown from China is, the shutdown of flights from China was something that the media, the same media that's now telling us, yeah, the shutdown should continue as long, the economic shutdown should continue as long as possible. They seem to be saying, oh, yeah, they will not admit that they were wrong about flights from China. The truth is there should have been a shutdown in flights from Europe, too, but we didn't know how badly Europe had been hit. And when you break down what's gone on in Italy, the elderly, the particularly aged population there, they have, I think, the second oldest in the world after Japan. They have direct flights, a lot of direct flights, not just from China, but from Hubei province, which is where Wuhan City is in China, because of the textile factories. And there's a lot of crossover with China on that. That's an important differentiator between us and them. And then they also have a higher percentage of smokers than we do, which unfortunately for the smokers out there, that does increase your risk from this disease. So please take good care of yourself. Take a little extra precaution if you're a smoker. But Italy has a higher rate of smoking, particularly among the elderly, substantially. I think it's double what it is in the United States. So they got hit and they weren't ready. We're now going to have been getting ready for 2 weeks. And people that think that we should just continue in this current mode indefinitely, I'd want to ask them, what do they think the acceptable costs to the economy are, right? What do they think the acceptable range is of what we should do here? And they don't have any answers, because right now people are scared, they're angry, and there's a lot of jockeying for status among those who are in the narrative right now, right? Who's going to be listened to on this and who's not in the media? You'll see a lot of that. I just want my country and my city to be able to continue to function and go back to work as soon as possible. And that's just where we are, right? That's just, we have to confront this, that there's not going to be an easy choice to make, an easy time. So Dr. Fauci, though, saying that that's a very important part of this. And also we've got some on the, some update on the usage of chloroquine. The usage of chloroquine is we're hopeful on this one. It could be turning a corner. It will not eliminate the fear and the shutdowns and everything, even if it shows some very high likelihood of working, but it certainly will be an issue or rather, it'll certainly be an advancement that will help dramatically against this. It'll help dramatically in our fight against the disease. So we'll have to see. I'll give you a little bit of where we are on that. I think New York State has, as of tomorrow, New York State as of tomorrow will be using chloroquine to treat this. So we'll hopefully be getting frontline data, and it's not going to be as controlled a study as we'd like, but frontline data very, very soon.